All right, well, this is a very special edition of the Walk Around podcast. We have with us the one and only Nick Funsch and Danny Vendrell, our original hosts of the Walk Around pod. Here we are 2 years later since we launched, and get a load of this stat. The Walk Around podcast has been played over 10,000 times at this point.
Wow.
Whoa.
You know, I don't know if that's a successful metric, but it just sounds really good, doesn't it?
How much of that was Nick just replaying over and over his favorite episodes?
I leave it on my favorite episodes on repeat. You know, the funny thing is, Danny, and I don't know how you feel, it's interesting being on the guest side of the walk around because I didn't give enough credit to the hour and a half of hair and makeup that we went through prior to getting on the pod. And it looks like Marc and Elliot are the beneficiaries of said hour and a half. You guys look great.
Yep. Well, maybe we can get you some hair so we can do that hair and makeup of yours.
Well, I was going to say, you guys probably get a little more makeup and a little less hair in your time before the pod.
Not only does Danny look good, but just look at that background. I mean, it is world class.
And it's real, right, Danny? That is
real.
A virtual background.
It's all real, and this is a plug. If you're not watching the YouTube version, you should be, because you could see the background and the lack of hair and the presence of makeup. So you want to be watching the YouTube version.
Thank you for reminding us this is a radio show. Yep.
Danny, who sponsors that background? I mean, certainly, do you walk in? Did you do that? Like, give us some insight there.
No, a little bit of research online kind of does you wonders. The power of the internet gives you all the inspiration you need.
Wow.
It is I think you could sell that background and people would use it. It's so good.
I might have to do that.
So Nick, while we were talking about we're replaying your favorite episodes, to boost our podcast stats. What episode is that you play on repeat over and over again?
Wow, straight to the hard-hitting questions, Mr. Schor there. It's actually interesting. I was reflecting as we were thinking getting into first off, congratulations, 2 years, not just to the walk around. There's a lot of people that make the walk around happen behind the scenes. And, we wouldn't be where we are without them. But I think back to kind of our early episodes when this was just an idea. And I think we were like, let's just turn a mic on. And we sat in a phone booth in 2+ years ago and said, let's just see what happens. And I think about where we are today, and I think it's fantastic. But when I think about that episode in particular, I think it was the second or third episode, and we had Sasha Lindekins on from Avion Consulting. And one of the things we explored was the power of kind of empathy, not only in kind of leading your team, but how it impacts your sales ability. And it doesn't matter what role you're in, inside automotive, outside automotive, interacting with others, whether personally, whether professionally, and leveraging empathy to do it, I think really stuck with me. And it's something certainly that I try to focus on just throughout my interaction. So for me, that was an early one that I got a lot out of and still continue to try to practice some of what we spoke about then.
That was a great episode, Nick. Let's take a listen to a clip from Sasha.
Yeah, I think there's 3 reasons why empathy is important in sales. Number one, it demonstrates customer centricity. It demonstrates that you're aligned with what their agenda is, that you care about their agenda, and that you're focused on them. It's not about you. It's not about your commission. It's about them getting the best car buying experience possible.
Okay.
And that you want to make sure they get something they like rather than something that you have. So customer centricity, number one. Number two, another thing about empathy that builds the relationship is once, I'm sure listeners will be able to relate to this. Once there is empathy in a relationship, communication opens up. There's less guardedness, right? We're speaking more freely. We're not hiding agendas as much. So it really opens up the flow of communication if you're able to demonstrate empathy with one another. The third one, and maybe the most pragmatic one, is good empathy allows salespeople to identify hidden needs. It allows them to really understand what's What's the pain point? What do they want in a situation? And because of that, it makes you a better salesperson. You're not guessing, you're understanding.
That is still one of our highest performing episodes.
Yeah. And
well, you know why? It's because I play it on repeat, man.
Yeah, big shout out to Sasha. Sasha's a good guy. I think we've all enjoyed being around Sasha. And shout out, Sasha and I actually went to the same alma mater. Little
Is
known
that a fact?
Yeah. Do you guys know where that is? Anyone?
University of Miami?
Well, that is my second alma mater,
Okay.
yes. No, University at Albany, SUNY.
Wow.
Sasha and I are both SUNY Albany alumni.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Small
Who
world.
knew?
And who
Sounds
knew?
like is that a precursor to the Schor Thing? Be an alumnus of this university there?
Well, it could be,
All right, we'll see.
You never know what's going to happen on a Schor Thing, but we'll have to wait till later to find out. But Danny, what do you think? What are some of the memories that stand out for you in season one or season two? You can give your hosts here a plug if you want.
Yeah, why not?
But yeah, what stands out in your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. So many fond memories of season one with Nick. Of course, the hair and makeup hours, goes without saying. When you look back, I think over 50 episodes, and I kind of have to take it here as a marketing guy, a lot of just awesome episodes about building your brand, marketing, with people all across, inside and outside of automotive. A few episodes that come to mind, if you're looking back at kind of the catalog, episode 21, 26, 30, 31, there's a lot of awesome nuggets in there about differentiating your dealership, differentiating your brand. And I think more relevant than ever with so many of the dynamics of the industry today. And so one that definitely sticks out, we had a guest, Bob Lanham from Meta, and the first episode that we did with him, Nick and I interviewed with him, it was episode 21. And he kind of introduced this concept from his perspective, kind of called media mix modeling, and outlining exactly how, in a really tactical way, dealerships should be thinking about their marketing spend and making good advertising decisions. And I think it's as relevant as it was back then. And so maybe we take a listen.
Just think of it this way. You map it out and you say, wow, I spend a lot on this platform. But if there's another media platform that can say, hey, I can do exactly what this platform, or maybe even two platforms combined, but I can do it for a third of the cost and give you the same return, if not higher, would you be interested? Well, of course I'm interested. Boom, next thing you know, you bring in that vendor, you've removed to maybe more expensive vendor, and you just cut your cost and you're selling the same amount. That's media mix modeling, understanding everything you're buying, what role each one has, and then what the impact is on sales.
Yeah, Bob is such a great guest. We've had him back. He's probably one of our first return guests on the walk around, and he just continues to throw out such great insight. I think with us, he talked about, does price even matter anymore?
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, that was interesting.
And that theme of customer experience has also been woven throughout all of our conversations. Bob
also a big supporter of the podcast on LinkedIn.
He is. We love Bob's support and always appreciate him sharing.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's flip it around then. I'm curious, Elliot, what's your favorite episode? And you don't have to go to the most recent season. You can go back to season one if you like. But, as you've kind of been part of this project, what stands out to you as you think back and we celebrate kind of 2 years of doing this?
Well, of course, naturally, I could, of course, say that my own episode was the best episode. If you recall,
when you were a guest.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
But, that would be too easy and a little self-serving. So I'm not going to go there. But let's take a listen anyway no, just kidding. No, I honestly, one of the best episodes that I thought you guys did was with Jason Stein. I thought Jason has a great view on the industry, and I thought you guys did a really nice job getting him to put his guard down a little, maybe say a little more than he would have normally said. But anytime you could have someone like a Jason Stein who has just an interesting purview on the market and his pulse literally on the auto industry, I thought Jason gave some really good insights. So let's take a look listen to Jason.
Yeah, the opportunities are around an accelerant that we could not have imagined back around NADA in February. Everybody talked about how the world needed to move into a digital space at a much faster clip. They talked about how dealers were dinosaurs and just weren't adapting to what consumers wanted in the February 2020 world. And then March 2020 hit. What we've seen happen is, as best described by one of our guests on our World Congress virtual conversations this spring, is that the retail world went probably accelerated 3 to 5 years in 3 to 5 months. And it's so true at every level, whether it's handling consumers in a different way, whether it's responding to customer needs that are dramatically or were dramatically different and are dramatically different now, or it's just simply the digitization aspect of the retail space, which the really progressive dealers have moved very, very fast. And I think what you've seen is that those dealers who were ready for the change and who were prepared to take on a whole new virtual experience or address consumer needs that were drastically different are ready for it.
Jason is so great. He's gone on to so many bigger and better things since that episode. He's now doing his own show on satellite radio, and he's even talked to us about coming back on the podcast for season 2.
Oh, is that a foreshadowing?
It is. It's a little foreshadowing.
There you go.
A little foreshadowing.
Then we'll pick up on that right after the break.
Exactly.
Yeah. But no, I think Jason's a good guest too. But we're curious, guys. Where do you guys see this industry going? This is something Elliot, we've been asking all of our guests on this season. And, what are your thoughts, Nick?
Well, I would like a minute to think about that. And while I think about that, I think we should ask Mr. Spoto what his favorite memory of the podcast is.
To me. All right.
Yeah, he's not getting off that easy there.
Yeah.
You want to formulate your answer while I share my favorite
You could take Nick out of the host role, but you can't take the host out of Nick.
There you go.
I'm also going to go back to season 1 of the podcast. And if you remember, Carrie Weiss was such an awesome guest. And Nick, you talked about empathy for leaders. The other piece to that is incorporating different perspectives. And she talks about how do you grow a dealership's talent, specifically women in the industry. And it's all about encouraging and incorporating different perspectives within the dealership. Let's listen to Carrie.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to probably 2015, I've always been involved in some type of diversity initiative in automotive. I was on the board of Women in Automotive for a number of years where we are focusing on gender, which is, I think the lowest hanging fruit that we need to tackle in automotive, right? But for me, being not only a woman, but a person of color, I have 2 identities that I have to tackle, right? It's kind of, they call it the double bind. It's kind of the double disadvantage in some ways. And, and so when you only focus on women, you fail to kind of attack some of the other challenges that people with multiple identities have. And so last year, I think with all that was happening in our country, there was a lot of discussions about race. It kind of opened the door for me after working in the business for 20 years to tackle something that I was really uncomfortable with doing, talking about race. People get very uncomfortable on that topic. Diversity in general, people get defensive. And so, but I felt like it was the time because companies were talking about it. They were open to it. They were trying to figure out like, how do I attract more diverse talent? And I just felt like I was in a position, having established myself in the industry, that I can make a difference. And so me and 3 other women who work in retail on the service side, They're women of color, came together and created Women of Color Automotive Network. And part of that was about focusing on the individual. We're not going to change the whole automotive industry and the system overnight.
Right.
But how do we empower individual women of color to first want to join this business, but second, want to stay in this business? Because we could attract them all we want, but if the culture and the environment doesn't change, they're going to leave and go to another industry. And so part of it is us inspiring them to show them that, hey, you can make it to the top in automotive. It is possible. And then here's what you need to do. And here's how you can continue to grow in your career. And so that's been a big part of this last year, at least virtually, in giving that information to these women. We have 500 members as of now. And we have about 50 allies, right? Like men who have really been a part of it, which has been inspiring to me and somewhat surprising.
You know, it's really good advice on how you can help your dealership flourish, not only from a business perspective, but your people.
Yeah, I'd actually forgotten about that one.
Yeah, she was great.
That's a really good call. I love hearing about that from, there's so much hidden value to unlock in a dealership by helping to motivate and keep and train and teach people. We see it all the time.
Yeah.
It's it reminds me of like you see it in like the NFL, and I know we're going to be in football season, and you see players, and we're Dolphin fans here, so I can make fun of them, but you see players that they are on the Dolphins and they're duds, and then they go over to New England and they're studs. And what's the difference? Has their talent changed? No. Right. What's changed? It's the coaching.
Yep.
Right.
It's the environment.
The culture. And so
it's interesting. You talked about the coaching. There's and the player escapes me, but we're also in the tail end of baseball season, and the Atlanta Braves traded for a player from Detroit, and he was struggling with his batting average in Detroit, and he got in the Braves lineup and started immediately making an impact. And they asked him, what's the difference? And the Braves traded for him because one of their scouts identified a flaw in his swing that the Detroit was unable to recognize. And so he was just muddling through it. They made that fix, and he's been on fire. And I think it speaks to the power of coaching, having a third-party perspective to provide that feedback. And really, feedback's a gift, and it enables you to kind of unlock your fullest potential.
And we heard that also recently from one of our guests, Matt Prospel from Predictive Index. If you put the right people in the right roles and you encourage them, good things are going to happen.
Yeah, it's amazing how much an environment change, a coaching change, all of that unlocks hidden value.
Hidden value.
Yeah, it's something I've definitely enjoyed on. I don't know if you guys have watched the Hard Knocks this year with the Lions, but man. I mean,
that coach, Dan Campbell,
it's like, and the Dolphins had him too.
I know.
Yeah. And the guy kicked butt for the Dolphins, and then they fired him.
I know it.
But I've been
life of a Dolphins fan.
I know, but I have been thinking about the way he coaches with such passion. And it makes me want to be part of that team.
Play for a guy.
It makes me want to root for the Lions, which is so weird. But yeah, it's
all right, Nick. You've had
all right. Back to the fastball, the high heat, right?
What? Yeah. Where do you see? What are you excited about for this industry?
What's on top of mind for you?
I think both of these things can be true. Excitement and what's on top of mind. This weekend I was perusing through something, and I don't know if you guys have seen it. I'm sure you have, but there was an old video of Steve Jobs at a investor meeting, and a reporter was asked a pretty pointed question about their strategy. And this is years ago, pre-Apple being what it is today. And, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version, but the high notes, but he spoke about putting the customer experience first. And he goes, if we tried to design our products based on what the engineers wanted and thought was cool, we would inevitably miss out on the customer experience and what they thought. And so if you kind of begin with the end in mind, that consumer experience, and then you reverse engineer kind of the product or the process back to that, obviously nobody can argue with Apple's growth and all of those things over those years, but it is super insightful from years ago. And so I think of the same thing about the automotive industry. I think we're in this really transition stage. I think there have been some influences that have kind of forced the hand and accelerated some change in retail automotive. But I think that consumer experience and putting the consumer first, and then kind of reverse engineering your processes, the products you have, meaning the software, the tools, all of those things to support that consumer experience, is going to put dealers on a trajectory to kind of outpace their competitors. It's going to put OEM companies on a trajectory to outpace their competitors, and I think it's going to help grow them. So I'm super excited, and I think to be a part of the industry as we navigate these waters, and some inch ahead, some are a little further behind. But, I think that consumer experience is really driving change backwards throughout the industry. And it's fun to be a part of, to help dealers solve, I think, but also to know that what we're going to get is a better product in the end.
Nick, that is so closely aligned to what we heard from one of our other recent guests, Tin Trong.
Oh, yeah.
Where, he's bringing that concept of the customer centricity to his role at Echo Park. And if we start with the customer and then design around that,
right,
your business is going to be a success.
Yeah, I think dealers in general, painting with a broad brush, but we have a tendency, I think, in the auto business to start with our goal in mind. We want to sell another car, right? We want to
hit our number.
We want to retain another customer, right? We want to make more money, grow our PVR, lower our expenses. And a lot of that sort of ignores the customer experience. It's almost like, well, let's make sure it's not going to impact the customer experience too much, as opposed to, I think what you're saying, Nick, is to really start with that experience in mind and build backwards from there, and you'll reach your goals.
Well,
Danny,
sorry.
What do you think? Or Nick, you have something else to add?
No, I was just going to tag. I think you're hearing a lot more in the industry around the value of a customer over their life. And I think, Elliot, to your point, historically, we've been focused on the deal and what's the value of this deal. And so I think you'll see that, whether it's vendor relationships, lender relationships, all of these things, how do they align towards supporting that kind of value of the customer over their over that relationship that you have through the dealership. But Danny, what's your perspective there? Sorry, Mark. I jumped on you there.
It's a good addition, Nick.
Yeah. No, I think just kind of building off that, and especially where we are today in the industry, it's hard to not talk about electrification and EVs as the trend and things that are top of mind. And I think we're in a really interesting point where everyone's kind of learning all simultaneously at the same time. We're OEMs, dealerships, customers, we're all going to be kind of learning and figuring out and navigating what is this buying process, the servicing process, what does that all look like, Nick, to your point, kind of the whole journey. And I think it's a really interesting place to be in, and actually reminds me of an episode that we did with Brian Kramer. That was episode 23. And just some
Danny, do you have all the episodes memorized?
Danny,
like, what is going on? Are these what is going on here?
I gotta represent,
fan, 23.
I gotta represent the marketing angle. If people are listening and they're like, I gotta listen to this right now, I'm giving you the number.
All right, there you go.
I like that. Wow.
But he talked about just his process for digitizing the sales process at his store, with just the eyes wide open, let's just blank canvas, see what this could look like, and the steps that he took. And I think it'll be interesting to see where it all ends up for all of us.
Big shout out to Brian in his new role there. And big supporter of the podcast, and we're a big fan of his too. So I love that. Good
Best
call
of luck
out
to him.
Good call out.
So you guys may have heard about this since your departure from the podcast, and since we started hosting, we've introduced a new segment that I like to say is sweeping the podcast nation.
Yeah.
The automotive podcast nation.
That's right.
Are you talking about the Spoto thing?
Close.
Close.
Oh,
You know.
You're warm, but you're
Okay.
not quite there. We're talking about none other than a Schor Thing.
That's right.
the Schor Thing.
So, Elliot, do you have any Schor Things for us to close us out? for
Yeah,
this
you know,
episode?
I think I do.
Okay.
I do
I'm
have some
excited.
sure things.
I don't
and
know about this. Usually we collaborate on the Schor Thing.
Usually we do
This is a
prep.
surprise.
We do, and I have a couple of them.
All right.
That kind of riffing on the fly here.
Okay.
Probably not the best idea, but we're going to go with it.
Let's go.
There you go.
So I do have probably I'll go with one business.
Okay.
And then two kind of fun ones. So we'll see. So from a business perspective, and we were just talking about EV, and we've been talking about EV all season long,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And I have strong beliefs about EV, right? I believe that Danny Vendrell's next car purchase will be an electric vehicle. Sure thing or not a sure thing?
Schor Thing.
I'm going to say not a Schor Thing. And I think I know why.
Oh, interesting.
He has nowhere to go. Some of you may know this, some of you may not, but Danny here is moving on in his career to Meta, the home of our good buddy, Bob Lanham. And he is going to be working 100% remote. So he's very economical, our Danny here. I know sometimes at the salad bar, he'll go for the prepackaged salad versus the full salad bar. Because,
Keep the weight down.
keep the weight down, but also it's a little lighter on the wallet.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm thinking he will not be purchasing an EV because he's going to be working from home.
Well, maybe we need to edit the Schor Thing that it needs to be his next purchase may be electric mobility, meaning a bike, a scooter, or
There
a
you go.
car, because maybe that plays into it. But we'll see.
Well, a lot of speculation on Danny.
There we
Hear
go.
it from the man himself.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, very revealing conversation from Marc, especially the salad bar part. I thought I was under wraps there. I didn't know it was so noticeable, but it's all good. It's all good. The interesting thing for me that some of you may not know is I like to drive a manual car. I've driven a manual for every car I've ever had. And so until we can solve the EV with the stick shift equation, I am not a sure thing for the moment.
Wow.
Wow.
That curveball.
I think
Wow. The underdog coming through.
really, and out of all the EV talk that we have had, I have not heard the manual transmission
That's right.
come
Yeah.
up
That
as
is true.
as a reason not to get an EV. And so there you have it. All of our manufacturing friends who are listening, there's a market out there for
There's a market.
manual electric vehicle.
All 10 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Danny, I wouldn't hold your breath on that one. But,
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
all right. So next, okay. So, where was my train of thought? Okay. So, next we'll have a little fun.
Yes.
All right. All right. Little fun.
We've been having a lot of fun.
Well,
Yeah, what have we been doing?
We're gonna
What
start
do you
now.
mean?
And many of you may not know this about our former host, Mr. Funsch, but Nick grew up in a very special city
Mhm.
Yeah.
He did.
around a very special golf course,
Yes.
and has very special ties to that golf course.
Uh-oh.
And yes, I'm talking about Augusta National. That is where Nick hails from, and Nick has close ties to the Masters.
I will say though, I think it's probably proven that just because you grow up near a golf course, that doesn't necessarily translate to your game.
Oh, well, that is 100%
Right?
true.
Right?
No doubt about it.
Okay.
And you guys have probably heard a lot about the controversies going on in golf right now.
Yeah.
Good one.
And this is going to be going
It's a
on
good
for
one.
a long time. These controversies. It's not going away. It's in the courts now, right?
Yeah.
But I believe.
Can I just say I love the
I believe.
I believe we got
With such conviction. With such
Uh,
conviction.
go.
I
for it.
believe Live Golf will end up being successful. I do. I believe that Live Golf will be long-term successful in the golfing industry. And I believe that's a sure thing. Nick, Danny, Marc, sure thing or not a sure thing?
Who wants
Wow.
Definitely.
We're pivoting from automotive to golf. Here's my comment. Here's my thought. I would say, not a comment. If you have unlimited resources, the likelihood of a sure thing is significantly higher. And so, the upstart, golf league has unlimited resources. I would imagine at some point they're going to expect some return on those resources. But certainly the golf industry is ripe with disruption right now and causing a lot of waves. It'll be interesting to see. I think Liv is playing this week. We just wrapped up the FedEx Cup playoffs, and now we pivoted to a golf podcast, which is fantastic. But I think it'll be interesting the next 6 months what happened, because you'll have the President's Cup, which players aren't playing in. You'll have the other two majors coming up that were prior to Liv players leaving, and so it'll be interesting to see kind of what shakes out. We'd expect some ruling on official golf rankings. For live events, which will be interesting. They don't play the 72 holes, the field size, all these things. So certainly a disruptor. And my comment would be the likelihood of a sure thing depends on unlimited resources, which Liv certainly has.
That doesn't sound committal, Nick.
Yeah.
Sure thing or not a sure thing?
Yeah, it's a simple question, Nick.
He's going to pass. All right.
All
So
right.
I'm going to be
All right.
bold here.
Yeah.
I'm
Bold.
going to say not a sure thing.
Oh.
Wow.
I think Liv is going to go by the way of, you brought up football before. Remember
no.
the
XFL?
XFL?
Oh yeah.
Remember the XFL?
XFL was he hate me.
He hated
He hate me.
There's always an attempt to compete with the main professional league, and it just never seems to work out. I see Nick's point about unlimited resources, and there's a ton of money behind this.
Yeah.
But somehow I think the world's top players are going to stay in the PGA, and the Liv is just going to go by the wayside.
Interesting.
Not a sure thing.
Not a sure
I
thing.
would say I'm more in Mark's court there.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
There were a lot of
turned it.
words to say I'm all in Mark's score.
Yeah, there you go.
There's a lot of setup just to land on that.
All right, Danny, what do you think? So far, I guess I'm.
Or do you even care, Danny?
Yeah.
I know you're not
Yeah.
as big of a golf fan, but what do you think?
So here's my thing. I'm going to go sure thing, and
Yeah.
here's
All right.
why.
That's right.
I think if they can figure out a way, again, a pool of resources that is very large. If they can figure out a way to activate people that are just typically not your active golf fans,
Right.
get into those different audiences, I think they're going to find, it may not be, the majority market share, but they're going to find their place. And so I'm going to go sure thing.
Well, that is a good
Danny
take.
with good word usage
That
there.
is a good take
Activate.
right there.
He goes, activate.
I
It's like
learned
that
from you,
Family
Nick.
Feud.
True marketer.
True marketer.
Right?
True
True to the core.
All right. Well, Danny, best of luck to you in Meta.
Seriously.
It's been a thrill.
Thank you,
You've
Dan.
helped us launch this podcast. You've been a huge contributor to JM&A as a whole. We wish you the best. Nick,
Hopefully,
we love you.
hopefully he can influence that algorithm to put JM&A
Yes,
posts and
absolutely.
this podcast in front
Little
of
further up.
people there at Instagram and at Facebook and all those meta properties out there, and maybe we'll take the podcast into the metaverse.
Who knows?
Next
Hey,
time.
Danny, can you help us get Zuckerberg on the pod?
Yeah, come on, pull some
I
strings.
mean, listen, anything is technically possible.
Okay.
The probability, I'm not sure yet, but
So you're saying there's a chance.
I'll
there's a
certainly be cheering y'all on from the sidelines and adding to the views for sure.
All right,
Awesome.
Nick, thank you so much for joining
Always a
taking
pleasure.
your time.
Thank you, Nick.
Elliot,
Mark,
till the next year ahead on the Walk Around Podcast.
to the next season.
What are you doing? Oh, you're going to Universal and you are going to
Universal.
sweat.
And be with 10,000 of my closest friends.
Oh, what a fantastic sounding weekend.
The sacrifices I make as a father is just, it's endless. It's endless.
So let's talk about the Universal Starter Pack and kind of understand what you use, what you don't. Fanny pack?
My wife loves a good fanny pack.
Yeah.
She's convinced me that it's like trendy now and not weird or nerdy. So she uses the fanny pack because you
Okay.
want to try to avoid the lockers, you know?
Yes.
But don't you have to put them in the lockers right before you get on the rides?
I think there are some rides now, like the new roller coaster, you do.
Yeah. And then water bottle with a fan on top to spray your face. Like, how you feeling about that? With lanyard that hangs around your
Lanyard?
chest? Yeah.
No, we do that, and then we do the matching shirts and then the matching hats. No, we don't do the water bottles. I try to carry as least amount as possible.
Bucket hat? Like with the strap that pulls up, so when you're on the thing, it tightens to your...
Transition glasses. You got transition glasses because you go inside in the line. You need them to transition. You go outside.
And white New Balance sneakers.
Tank top or t-shirt?
Sun's out, guns out.
Yep, tank top. Can you see me in a tank top?
Yeah,
It's going to be a great podcast.
This is going to be good. Get ready. We are warmed up. All right. So normally you're sitting here. Is this throwing
Do
you
y'all
off?
want to switch?
Is that what it
You're
is?
usually on the right.
Yeah. Let's
Switch. The vibe was off. The vibe was up. I could tell. I know my partner. I could tell something was off. All right. So I'll do a countdown and then just start us off, and we'll freestyle. We're like jazz musicians. See how it goes. All right. Ready?
Good luck, everybody.
Me.
3, 2, 1.